Can't believe it's March already. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
Do you approve?
I second.
Wonderful. Motion a second. All in favor, please say aye, or you can use the reaction function on the bottom to do thumbs up.
Aye.
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 Aye. Anyone opposed? All right. Or any amendments? Great. We approved the February minutes. So I'm excited to welcome Ethan Blumenthal to the call today. Ethan is the, I think, General Counsel for NCSEA, which is a wonderful policy leader on renewable energy in the state. Also has a company called Good Solar that you should check out. They do really cool job training programs down east for solar installers with equity in mind, which is always fantastic. Ethan, do you want to say anything more to introduce yourself?
Just, hello, and thank you all for, having me on. I'm looking forward to talking more with you.
And Ethan, you're actually first on the agenda, so.
Perfect. Well, first, sorry if I get a little traffic noise here. I'm joining. I just stepped outside one of the skyscrapers newly built in downtown Charlotte for another meeting. So got a little traffic coming by me, but hopefully not too bad for everyone. But yeah, so do you want to introduce the subjects, Michelle, or do you want me to just hop on in?
Is Ben on? I was gonna have, if Ben it was here, I'd ask him to do that actually, but I'm not sure if he's been able to make it.
Hey, he's here.
Oh, cool. Ben, do you want to? Ben actually did the lifting here and invited Ethan, so I think Ben should have the opportunity to introduce the subject.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. And hey, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Ethan is really on the ground floor with a lot of these programs that Duke is coming up with. I know that in a lot of these proceedings at the commission level, NCSEA is an intervener, so they would be able to provide comments on a lot of the programs that Duke is trying to create. And what specifically I understand Ethan's going to talk about today is the changes made or the updates made to the Green Source Advantage program, which is a really important pathway that we should consider for utility scale procurement, and then as well as a new program called Clean Energy Impact, which I believe follows more of a shared solar approach as opposed to a community solar approach. The difference being that shared solar would be essentially, well, I'll have Ethan explain it to you, but just to preview, we'll be talking specifically about Green Source Advantage and the Clean Energy Impact program. And I've worked with Ethan for years in different capacities. He's a really, really smart energy wonk. We're really happy to have him. So Ethan, I'll hand it over to you, and thanks so much for being here.
Thanks, Ben. Perfect. Teeing it up. There's obviously in this space so much going on so much of the time that I appreciate a little orientation here, and please feel free to jump in with questions at any time. I'll do my absolute best to avoid jargon as best I can, though sometimes it just slips out. So please, if there's any question on terms and or terminology or anything else along that line, please don't hesitate. So with that, I'll just kind of jump straight into it. Duke, specifically as to, when you talk about customer facing programs, you can go all over the place, anything from vehicle charging to rooftop solar to these larger scale programs. If you're familiar with the terminology in front of the meter or behind the meter, these would be considered in front of the meter programs that are more transmission tied, larger developments on the whole, whereas some of the more rooftop policies or EV charging policies are more behind the meter sort of thing. So I'm going to really just talk about these newer, larger programs, two of which just got filed probably 3 weeks ago now. Time's elusive. But then they also have teased a third, they being Duke, have teased a third program to be filed in the not too distant future. I believe so. I'll start with the more residential facing program. Or actually, I'll start by saying the one that they haven't filed, it will be called the Clean Energy Connection Program. And in their most recent filing, they said that it is that the companies are continuing to develop this concept and they anticipate moving forward on it in the coming months. So that is about all that we have details wise on timing. As it's actually, as been kind of teed up, that's actually most likely to be this more shared solar program. And we can dig into that. There's also some movement at the legislature on community solar. I'll save that for towards the end of my talks because that's all hypothetical. We don't know what this new program is actually going to look like in the actual details. And the movement at the legislature is in the bill drafting phase. So still very early, still, trying to line up supporters on that. But I'll circle back to those. The two big programs that they filed, and this is in both Progress territory up where y'all are, as well as Carolina's territory where I am. So they're filed in both of Duke Energy's territories. I'll start with the residential or the smaller user one. So there's a dividing line of 1,000 kWs or 1 megawatt, same thing, of usage. If you are below that line, then you would be able to participate in the Clean Energy Impact Program. If you're above that line, then you would be going to the GSA choice. GSA standing for Green Source Advantage, which is the previous iteration of the program. Now it's evolving to GSA choice. So Clean Energy Impact is an evolution itself of a program called Renewable Advantage, offered by the Duke utilities. At the end of the day, it boils down to a REC, a renewable energy credit purchase program. There are some wrinkles that are different from the previous REC purchase program that Duke was offered, Renewable Advantage. The biggest difference being that it is locationally tied, meaning that all of the credits will come from the Carolinas within the balancing authorities of either Duke Carolinas or, in your case, Duke Progress, which does bleed over to South Carolina, though the majority of the projects would likely be built in North Carolina. But because it's Progress, the project could be built outside of Raleigh, and it would still, the credits that you might be buying up in Asheville would still be tied to those credits. Just for clarity's sake, they call these credits Clean Energy and Environmental Attributes, CEEAs. Way too much lingo and too many acronyms in this world, but it's kind of what you got to live with sometimes, unfortunately. They call it that because renewable energy credit, a REC, is for the electricity generated, but doesn't actually have the carbon reduction built into it. So a CEEA is supposed to represent both the renewable energy being generated as well as the carbon reduction attribute that would go along with it. What's important to note on both the GSA choice and the Clean Energy Impact Program, and this is a concern of NCSEA, and we've been quoted on this, and we will be filing on this. Both programs do not have what is known as additionality. Additionality can be defined a number of different ways, but generally it is kind of defined as going beyond what is otherwise required of the utility. And for a number of different reasons, though Duke Energy primarily cites transmission capacity constraints, they say that they can't provide additionality in these programs. So these CEEAs that will be available for purchase through the Clean Energy Impact Program will be sourced from utility scale solar projects that are being built in North Carolina, either right now or going to be built in the future through solar procurement processes. Yes.
Hey, Ethan, can I just jump in really quick? And is the I understand that the GSA program has to be within the corresponding service territory. In our case, it would be DEP. Is that the same for the Clean Energy Impact Program, or can that be sourced anywhere in the state?
That it's the same. That goes to, until we are presuming that Duke has said they are moving forward with merging the two utilities so that it will just be Duke Energy in the Carolinas, and we don't have to do this song and dance of having two utilities both called Duke Energy. But for the time being, yes, for any of the programs that they operate from a regulatory standpoint, effectively have to be separate. Otherwise it gets super complicated. Just with different agreements that have to be done between the utilities, even though they are owned by the same parent company. But as they are filed the exact same in both. And the solar procurements will be happening in both and across both service territories. So I don't foresee, now, I could be wrong, but I don't foresee there being an availability issue between the two because they are different. But thank you, Ben, that's good flag on that. But to the point on additionality, they're adding, Duke is saying they need every bit of transmission capacity to reach 70% reduction by 2030 as they can get. And so they can't, so these programs, if you buy into them, isn't building a new solar facility that wouldn't otherwise exist. It is paying into a solar facility that is being built one way or the other. And just to go back a little bit in time, House Bill 951, which was passed a couple of years ago, set an ownership split of Duke Energy owning 55% of all new utility scale solar and independent producers owning 45%. So those attributes would be coming either from a Duke owned facility or a independent owned facility that has a power purchase agreement, a PPA with Duke. So that's where they'll be sourced, though Duke explicitly left the door open. Should wind be built, onshore wind or offshore wind, they could be sourced by wind in the future. But that's they're just not going forward with that yet. They're not allowed to go forward with that yet from the Utility Commission. So that's where they'll be sourced. So the first real concern is on additionality. The second real concern is on affordability. These, both the GSA Choice Program and the Clean Energy Impact Program are what would be referred to as premium products, meaning that you're paying extra to participate in them. So you would have a bill adder onto your utility bill in order to participate, and Duke will retire the RECs and the carbon attributes on your behalf. So you can claim that that reduction is coming from you, but it's not like a shared solar program or community solar program, which we can get into in a minute, that would actually be you having more of a direct relationship with the electricity that's being generated. This really isn't about the electricity, it's about the credits that electricity generates, and you're buying those. So there is no way that either of these programs save you money. At least on the Clean Energy Impact. Green Source Advantage gets a little more complicated, which is why I saved it for the second part. The other thing that I wanted to note on the Clean Energy Impact that is good, that we do like, some of the cost of participating in the program would be siphoned off and sent to North Carolina Green Power, which is a good nonprofit organization that's been operating for at least a couple of decades. I think might even be a few at this point. And it is to support the installation of solar power systems throughout North Carolina. The biggest program that NC Green Power runs is solar on schools. So I think it's a safe presumption that any, the money that goes to them from this sort of participation would likely go to help more solar being installed on K through 12 schools. But again, that kind of builds into the premium product affordability side of it, showing you that it's not about saving money. It's about participating and going green, but there is no cost savings that would be realized there. So that's one angle, and it's great. And I will also note that both of these are required under the carbon plan. The Utility Commission did say that a REC purchase program needs to be available to the public. And we would argue there's other ways to potentially structure it, other things like shared solar that might be more cost effective, and ways to implement that where, there could be more low income households brought into the mix where, because this is a premium product, you're not going to see low income household participation in these sorts of things. I'm happy to stop there for a second before moving on to Green Source Advantage, or can just launch right on it. Keep going. If I'm seeing some in the chat, there we go. Get some FYIs, and I think that's it. Yeah, thank you, Ben, for the service territory map. That shows you the divide.
Yeah,
I
thanks,
have a quick-
Ethan. And
I have
yeah, we're just letting you know we do just we're probably about 5 minutes. Probably got 5 minutes left.
Okay. Michelle, did you?
I did, but I appreciate the time prompt. I want to give you a chance to talk,
Yeah.
but yeah, go right ahead.
All right, so I spent the time explaining all of that on clean energy impact because it is very similar to GSA choice. The Green Source Advantage choice has kind of two pathways. One is for again, these are for larger scale customers, but one is very much a similar CEEA purchase program, or they carry over the legacy Green Source Advantage structure, which is kind of a bring your own developer structure where you can contract. It would be a three-way contract between whoever the entity may be, Bank of America, City of Charlotte, City of Asheville, Buncombe County, whoever it may be, and a solar developer who would actually build the facility, and Duke Energy themselves. And it's complicated how the relationship works, but you could either do that, which is the old Green Source Advantage program, or a CEA purchase program. So just that's why I figured I'd spend the time on CEI, the Clean Energy Impact, because it kind of makes the GSA program easier to explain. Though you have either way, and it also is a premium product. They have a number of other things. If you are a very large customer, meaning 15 gigawatts of usage, then they also have a battery storage option available, which would be built on site and allow some time shifting of the renewables. So that's kind of writ large on those programs. I'll just briefly touch community solar, shared solar. That is most likely, if I, looking at the crystal ball here, since Duke hasn't really told us too much, but the community connection program will most likely be a kind of larger shared solar where people can subscribe or buy into these larger utility scale projects. And that would then potentially allow savings depending on how long you've subscribed for and the terms of the program. So we don't know yet what those look like. We don't know where. I'll just point to other states like Illinois, like Minnesota, that have run some fairly successful programs. I think we're more likely to look at something like what is in Florida right now, which has limited cost savings unless you're subscribed for the long term, but is a more direct relationship to the electricity generated itself. And then the final tag, just something to keep an eye out, since I know y'all are interested and looking at what's in the legislature. We are working on a new bill to edit the language for community solar in House Bill 589 that came out in 2017. Nothing got built under that program, unfortunately, but this would edit that language and hopefully provide some additional incentives for community solar to be built in tier 1 or tier 2 counties. North Carolina, tier 3 are the 10 most developed counties. I imagine Buncombe is on that list, but surrounding areas would not. So this would steer community solar to the less economically developed counties in North Carolina, and also be open to affordable housing in tier 1. So that could potentially be something. It would also be limited to the balancing authority, which in y'all's case would be a good thing because it's a lot easier to build solar out east than it is up in the mountains. So since you're in progress, theoretically something built in progress near Raleigh or near Rocky Mount or something, something out east would still be considered progress and could still have people subscribe to it all the way up where you are. So we're working on what the parameters of that bill may be and what other incentives may be there. But that's kind of something else theoretical, but in the works, and hopefully some bipartisan support already lined up on the Hill. But we will see.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ethan. Really appreciate you walking through that with us. And wondering if there are any questions, or Michelle, I don't know if you wanted to add something that you wanted to say earlier.
I think opening up for questions to Ethan would be a good idea.
Ethan, is there any other pathway for energy buyers to procure utility scale solar other than Green Source Advantage?
Right now, that's the only way that I'm aware of. As some of you may know, third-party sales of electricity is illegal in North Carolina. So you couldn't just enter a contract with a solar developer to build something and get the credit for that. That's illegal in North Carolina, as with many of the states in the Southeast. But it is legal throughout most of the United States. And it's a major barrier, but it is also something that would take a massive effort at the legislature to overturn. And as I'm standing, as I said, in Uptown near one of the new buildings, I'm not particularly far away from Duke Energy's brand new shiny headquarters. And I can tell you that they would defend that third-party sales. Well, they already did. They took a African-American church in Greensboro all the way to the North Carolina Supreme Court over the issue a number of years back. So unfortunately, yes, this is what we have to work with. With that said, rooftop solar has been capped at 1 megawatt for these big developers, big users of energy. Up your way, Sierra Nevada is one of them that has done a lot of work on this. While it's been capped at 1, within their rate cases, Duke has proposed lifting that cap up to 5 megawatts. So while it wouldn't be like a utility scale ground mounted facility, 5 megawatts is absolutely nothing to sniff at and would be a significant improvement in large scale users' ability to contract for their own electricity, renewable electricity.
And Ethan, when you say rooftop, do you actually mean, for clarification, you mean net metered systems?
Yes, yeah. So whether that's rooftop or adjacent ground mounts, or something like that, yes, it would be, and that's per meter, I guess.
Per meter, yeah. Each meter has, okay, good.
Yeah.
So thanks for all the updates, really informative. So just, I guess my question would be, and this is Brownie Newman, if Duke is saying, for these, the transmission, the transmission grid is really the limiting factor on how much utility scale solar is going to get built out in the state between now and 2030. And we need, all of it's kind of spoken for because, there's a robust industry and we're trying to do a lot. So if you participate in one of these programs, it's really not adding a new project that wouldn't have happened anyway, because the limiting factor there is transmission grid. So I guess, I'm open to these kinds of arrangements, but if in terms of how we would help support getting more solar out in the world, but if it's really not adding a solar farm that wouldn't have happened anyway, I guess, because from our standpoint at a high level, what we're really interested in is like speeding up the deployment of solar, right? So I guess I'm hearing that your sense is that this participating in these programs, you wouldn't really be able to credibly say that it would contribute in that way. But am I hearing you wrong or missing that? Or is that your sense for realistically, as they're currently constructed and with the transmission constraints, as they exist today, which I understand there's a lot of investment that's going to go into that to make it better. But like, is that what we're looking at right now?
Unfortunately, yeah, you've understood me pretty much exactly correctly. It's yeah, that's we've us and other allied organizations have had multiple conversations with some of Duke's top people in this area, and they've admitted this readily. They're saying in order to achieve the carbon reduction goals in the carbon plan in House Bill 951, they need all of that solar on the system for that. And there is no more room in the transmission pipeline until post 2030. So 7 years from now. And that I will say that is an engineering question that I'm an attorney, not an engineer. I'm rapidly learning how to be an engineer, but it's hard to push back on that. So there are other customers that are having very similar issues with that sort of map. Theoretically, you could say participation makes it cheaper, makes compliance with 951 cheaper for everybody else, at least. But it is rather opaque in how the costs of these programs will be passed on and whether they'll be captured by Duke's shareholders or Duke's ratepayers like us.
So I have one other quick question, and we could maybe Ethan, we could like take this offline sometime because there's probably maybe a short answer, and I'm sure there's a much longer answer. But like, let's say, we know that Western North Carolina is limited in terms of, how much really big utility scale projects can be built in this part of the state compared to the East because of topography. But let's say we did have, some utility scale projects in Buncombe County that we thought could be viable. We're actually looking at like floating solar sites as potentially viable sites. So while we don't have many sites, our transmission grid up here is not constrained like it is in the East, where there's all this new generation being built. So like if we supported development of a utility scale project here in Buncombe County, where it's not transmission constrained, and actually if we built a project up here, it probably realistically would be adding to what otherwise would happen across the state. I don't know, I guess I would just kind of raise that as like a space that might be interesting to explore because, we just don't have a lot of big solar being built up here for topographical reasons. And I guess the one other kind of related question I would ask would be in terms of pathways, wasn't the like Apple solar farm down near like below Hickory, that big solar farm down there, I think it's Apple, doesn't Apple own that solar asset themselves? I guess I'm raising the question, is that another pathway, like for companies, like some groups that just like want to procure RECs or procure energy, but another potential option would be for groups that are interested in procuring renewable energy to actually develop and own assets themselves and sell them into, the process to sell power to utility like other companies do. But if you keep your, RECs and stuff, then is that another potential pathway to explore for like a project that might get built in Buncombe County?
Yeah, so to your first question, as it just so happens, I asked that all but exact question to Duke themselves, and they just effectively said, well, transmission, so no, they don't have a specific carve out. They're just operating under the assumption. So all the existing stuff going in GSA choice or the clean energy impact are being sourced from the pre-existing solar procurement cycles. Or if you're doing the bring your own developer cycle of it and you're building your own, then that would be subtracted from the next solar procurement. So you still net out to the exact same amount that's going to be happening under the carbon plan regardless. But with that said, I do believe, I'm not entirely certain, I don't want to overspeak. I'm pretty sure you're right that the Apple facility is owned by them. And I'm not entirely certain, but I believe it's built over a data processing or storage facility, which uses a lot of electricity. So my guess is that is a net metered system, and they're using all of it on site. So that would be good. But with that said, I will mention, and I just dropped my email in the chat. Anyone, please feel free to reach out. But there is another potential pathway that could be built. PURPA, the Public Utility Regulatory Policy Act, within 589, which created this new regime, and not to go down the whole rabbit hole, but North Carolina was #2 installed solar. We're now #4. All of that is because of some state incentives that we had and a unique interpretation of PURPA. It's a federal statute that creates minimum guidance, but every state can then interpret it beyond that. And for a long time, we allowed 5 megawatt facilities that are bigger than most and standard 15-year contracts and paid a little bit more, that plus state tax credits. And that's why we have so much solar compared to a lot of other states. That whole regime got changed in House Bill 950 or 589 back in 2017, but PURPA remains. And so I believe that you could still build a 1 megawatt facility up to a 1 megawatt facility under PURPA. Duke would have to interconnect it and give you a 15-year contract at the avoided cost rate. So that would still be completely additional and owned by whoever builds it. So that would still be potentially another pathway there.
Yeah. That's kind of what I was thinking, like a PURPA based, solar farm asset. So anyway, yeah, but thanks for all your thoughts on all that. Interesting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, well, I think we are over time, but it was a great conversation. Thank you so much, Ethan. If y'all have any other questions, maybe you can drop it in the chat and Ethan can respond there. He also did provide his email. But Michelle, unless you'd like to hang on here a little bit longer, I think it's time to continue to move on.
Thanks, Ben, and thank you so much, Ethan. It is an interesting conversation and maybe a worthy conversation to think about what these pathways would mean for meeting our 100% renewable energy targets. The additionality obviously is a concern, but I don't think we have time to really hash that out right now. So the 100% clean energy plan is in the works. And I'm going to make a little pitch for folks participating in a conversation with me around that later on. So I think tabling that conversation for right now and giving the stage to Jamie, who has a presentation to share with us today.
Sorry, I was taking notes. Let me share my screen here. Operator error. All right, I think I got it. Okay, so last month when I spoke with y'all, can y'all hear me okay? Okay, thank you. So last month when I spoke with y'all, I was talked about like the theory of what I wanted to happen with BHPCC. And this month I'm coming to you with kind of nuts and bolts things that y'all can do to help us achieve the objectives which we're trying to reach, like 100% renewable energy, by plugging into what Greenbelt Alliance is doing. So I've got 7 slides. It starts off pretty nuts and bolts. This is a calendar of stuff that's going on. And then I'm going to go into some broader initiatives that BHPCC members can help out on. If you see anything that jumps out at you that you want to get engaged with, or you want to follow up and hear more about something, you're welcome to send me a chat or send me an email or a text, or bring it up now in the discussion, because I would love your help. And so would Summer and Hannah and Sam to get this stuff done. This is a kind of a calendar of stuff that's coming up, both work to do and things to go and talk to other people. As you may know, David Gordon, congratulations, gave us a pretty rough draft with a very collaborative effort about the 100% renewable plan, like last night at 12:05 p.m. So it's wrapping up. There's a BIPOC input, like a equity review happening right now with Jay Hackett, which the BHPCC needs to be involved with. And then there'll also be additional drafting of it, drafting of the plan in the next few months. So please stay plugged in with that. David, did I mess anything up on that? I hope I didn't.
You did great.
If I leave anything out, please feel free to jump in. We've got a lot of presentations and events coming up. There's 4 that are on the calendar for community presentations, but these come up all the time. I just got booked for 2 presentations It was with Council on Aging and going to the meal sites. So stuff comes up all the time. I'm happy to keep a calendar and share y'all on it. If you'd like to come to a presentation or with us or do them on the behalf of the BHPCC, that would be awesome. Earth Day 5K is a fundraiser coming up for GBA, and Micah last month talked about, or it might have been in the community engagement committee meeting, about getting more engaged at GBA events. So this is our fundraiser. If we had a table about BHPCC and what we were up to, it would be great to have members of the committees or subcommittees come and talk about our efforts and get the word out. Maybe recruit some more leaders. Or just talk about green technology, the things that you care about. So we would have staff there with you. You wouldn't be by yourself, but stuff like that will come up and I will keep bringing it to you so that you know where you can plug in. We have a member meeting every quarter. The next one's on May 24th. The last one was a lot of fun. It's at New Belgium Brewery. And please join us. And then we've got outreach events for the Blue Horizons Project. We're going to Grindfest over Memorial Day weekend and then Honeyfest the weekend after that. This is my season of cake. My wedding anniversary and my birthday is in that realm. So we would love volunteer help during that time because I will probably be a little bit distracted. So that kind of stuff would be super helpful for members to jump in on. There's hands-on stuff you can do. So this is our ESN program, Energy Savers Network. This is funded by the city and the county, Dogwood Health Trust, and some others. To weatherize client homes and to do window workshops, which is a piece of that, but it's a very involved piece where you're building storm windows. I put in some metrics in here. Michelle asked me to quantify our impact. And these are approximations based on the measurement and verification and extrapolating these numbers. But based on what we've done so far, homes save about 13% on their energy bill per year, which adds up to 380,000 kilowatt hours per year, which is additive because these measures stay in place every single year. We've done about 1,000 homes total at this point. There's a calendar link in here. I can share y'all the PowerPoint in the agenda. The calendar is volunteer opportunities that are coming up at people's homes that you can jump in whenever you want. So those are the hands-on ones. There's some more expertise driven opportunities in the next couple of slides. So this one is about teaching and writing. Greenbelt Alliance teaches continuing education, or we could do a lunch and learn for contractors that helps them be more green. We're working on one with Riverlink to do stormwater management for construction. So if you have that kind of expertise and you want to teach a continuing education class to reach tradespeople, GBA has the capacity to host that and working with, I forget the name of it, but the agency that certifies general contractors. They have accredited us to do this. And so you can plug into that system instead of having to make it up yourself. We need a blogger to help write about the IRA because, as you know, there's a whole bunch of to be continued. We don't know how things are happening or what's happening next. And as we learn new things, we need to start writing it. And you'd work with Steffi, who's our marketing expert. And then we've talked about this, and Summer and I have done some initial looking into having a megawatt dashboard on our agendas, but we don't know where to find that information. Like the county and the city are doing their projects. And so it's really easy or relatively easy to see where they're generating capacity. But what about private citizens? So it's like, okay, well, do we need to go to like the permit portal? Do we have to find the right person at the county and the city to sort that out? So getting to the bottom of that so we can get a real tracker of what impact we're having at a megawatt level for our 100% renewable goal would be really cool. So I'd like help with that. Micah and the Community Engagement Committee has written a plan. It's linked in the presentation, and it was in the previous meeting agenda, I believe. Maybe not because it's new.
I
But
think it's going to be discussed later in this agenda, no?
Oh, thank goodness. I'm focused on my own presentation. Okay, so there's 2 phases in here. And so there's lots of work to be done. And this is basically going forward from now, the next year or 2. And there's 2 phases that the group has outlined that will need your help. Producing materials, promoting them, and then helping run events and challenges, activities, engagement opportunities with the community that are deeper than what we've done. Deeper and more focused than what we've done before. So here's a place where members can and subcommittee members and supporters can jump in and help out. We would definitely love it. We need that capacity. And then I've got a couple slides with some random stuff that talking to staff is like what we need help with. We do a lot of work with Spanish families, and we have one staff member who is fluent in Spanish. So he probably shouldn't be doing all of this work. If we can get help to look at print material, but then also doing live translation, it would be super helpful if anyone has that capacity, or you know somebody who'd be interested in volunteering in that capacity. Then there's a climate outreach opportunity, which is coming out with us at the events. And what I would like to see here is kind of like having a staff member at the table and a volunteer at the table. So when we're interacting with the public, the staff member can kind of go off to the side and have like live home energy chats, like custom advice for people if they want to get deeper into it. And then have another person there to help just do the general chatting with folks as they walk up to the table, so that we can really go in depth in a more efficient way than we're doing now with home energy chats. So that's how I envision that. Program needs 2. We need help with client leads. This is going out and doing on the ground outreach. It's not canvassing, but it's putting up flyers, and it might be talking at events like at Mana Food Bank, things like that. Michelle asked that I added some kilowatt hour numbers in here. So we already saw the ESN numbers, but for neighbor to neighbor solar, right now we're doing 20 homes. That's gone up a little bit from the last one because of some more funding from the county. It's a 3.95 kilowatt system per home, which is about 79 kilowatts of generation. And we're doing that over 2 years. So it's not as many homes, and it's a little less impactful than the ESN program, but got to start somewhere. And it sure is exciting doing those low income family homes, because that makes such a big difference in their lives. We're working on a workforce development program, either for seniors in high school or maybe just a couple years out of high school, to do weatherization work. So we're piloting that program this year with some ARPA money. Kelvin and Michael are spearheading that, and more is to come. It's launching in June. So if you have experience doing workforce development, or maybe you can come and speak to our students, they're going to do a lot of hands-on training doing the weatherization work. And then I think this is the last slide about ways that BHPCC can plug in very directly to the work of getting to 100% renewable energy. We need help finding sponsors for our Earth Day 5K. I mentioned tabling before, but yeah, if you can come and help us do outreach at the event, or outreach to other runners, that'd be really helpful. We need cash to do these programs. So if you want to give, we appreciate that for the fundraising effort. And then if you can help us identify new funding sources, that's super helpful. So as we're going along, when we get a board member or a supporter that says, hey, you should meet this person that's on this granting committee, or hey, there's this company over here that's looking for sponsorship opportunities in the community, that kind of connection is so important, because people give to people. And supporting the work of Greenbelt Alliance and the BHPCC, we need that networking support. So those are the ways that BHPCC community council members BHP community council members can plug into directly the work we're doing to help make it to 100% renewable energy by 2042. Did I make my time? I feel like I was talking fast.
I think you did great.
Questions, comments, concerns?
I just want to make a pitch that I know we all volunteer here on this committee, and then on subcommittees, and then on work offline. So there were a lot of community outreach opportunities, and not only can BHPCC members participate in them, but you guys know a good Boy Scout troop that needs some community service time. What about your church? What about if you're affiliated with even other mission aligned organizations. So that is the need that we need to fill. And we don't necessarily, as just us in this room, have the capacity to do this. This is a community-wide initiative. So let's get the community more involved in these programs. So I'm really glad that Jamie was able to put these down on paper for all of us, because the staff are running as fast as they can to fill these slots. But I think if we could help to add capacity, that would just only increase our reach and our ability to be effective. So just a little pitch to think about who you know or what groups you're a part of that might be willing to participate.
So Jamie, do we have a link to that presentation so we can be reminded later?
I dropped it in the agenda and I'll put it in the chat here as well.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Jamie, for putting that all together for us. I really appreciate it, and for quantifying the impact.
My pleasure.
All right, next up on our new and internal business. So we have mentioned the idea of getting together face to face a few times, and I just wanted to kind of make that concept a little more real, and maybe even start to think about what date we would like to do that and how we'd like to have it structured. So this is an open conversation. We, as Jamie mentioned in the beginning of his opening slide, and as Dave will talk about later, we are hoping to review the 100% plan after it's done going through the kind of the DEIJ lens review. There are opportunities to contribute to that, though we are not looking for large changes at this point, because we do want the DEIJ committee to take a pass at it. And then we're going to need to digest it. The GSA is a strategy that was identified in that, for example. And I think we just got a bunch of information about the GSA, and we have to decide, okay, how could we actually implement using these tools to reach our 100% goal locally? So I think that's a longer conversation. There was a call for some face-to-face engagement in this committee. I remember Rocky's like, can we ever like get together? And we were like, yes, absolutely. So when should we get together? Should it be a normal meeting time? Should we dedicate a little bit more time to it? Should we dedicate a weekend day to it? What are people's thoughts about that?
So my 2 cents is that actually taking this meeting time, face to face and extending it in later into the evening or something like that, that would work well for me. And
I
Okay.
agree. I could definitely see that. And maybe it's like 3 hours, or I guess we're getting together for an hour and a half. If we really want to review it, it might need to be 2 or 3 hours.
Do we have room in the budget for pizza? Just wondering, or something like this. Okay, so I like that idea. And look, at the last strategic planning committee, I think that they said maybe May would be the when that would, so March, because we meet the first, like almost like the first of the month, like today, right? So if they're doing the review in March into April, it won't really be ready for distillation and then presentation to the committee members until May. Does that sound right, Dave and Jamie?
I
Is
just,
May, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I just dropped a quick doc I created of dates and deadlines in the chat. But I guess that's sort of one of the things that I wanted to ask too. So essentially, just to speak those dates out loud, people have them. The focus group is supposed to have their reviews and their responses back by the 27th of March. We have a meeting with Jay on March 30th to kind of review and go over everything. And then essentially, is that right? Yeah, then we are going to like make whatever changes, give it back to Jay on April 6th for one final review from him. And I guess, yeah, then the big question is, after that, when do folks want to look at it, and how big of a window? Because it is a fairly lengthy document. I mean, we're still missing some things, and at this point, it's about 140 pages. So that's kind of what we're looking at. Just to put that out there.
I think it's going to take some, maybe even consultation with a facilitator of some sort to think about what's the best way to get feedback in real time on a document that large, but certainly giving it to people to read in advance in as much detail as they're able would be helpful. So I think the May meeting is what we're going to swing for. There are a few people that have conflicts. I know right after this meeting, including Jeff Barton. Does anybody think that that would not work for them? That's who's on the call now, just to. Wow, this is really impressive.
That's strange. And yes, that was me.
Yeah, I got responses directly, and I was like, I think that was probably Dave. So odd. We lost internet at the collider, so I'm pushing this through my phone. So apologies if that happens again.
No worries. I don't really know what to say about that, Dave, because you are the person coordinating the 100% strategic plan. So,
I'll be in California as of April 28th. So that's going to be a tough commute for me for that one.
yeah. Okay. I think we have to continue that. I don't know what to say. Honestly, I'm a bit at a loss. Because that's
Well, certainly to me, it seems that given what Brownie said, which is true, this is a big document. It's going to take a while for us to get through it. It might not hurt to break it up into to more than one meeting. And I don't know if we can. I'm always reluctant to put anything in April because it's Earth Month and all that. But I think that might be a good idea to try to get something in before Dave goes west, and then meet again, actually, in an extended meeting in April, because it's a huge document. I did not realize it was 140 pages.
well, it sounds like the document won't be available until at least the end of April after it goes through the DEI process and then back to the team. So if we were going to try to plan a secondary meeting or sooner, I guess, outside of our regularly scheduled meeting.
To me, the other way is to break it up into 2 months, and then we'd be doing part of it in May and then part of it in June, which.
Dave, are you back in June? Or are you gone for a while?
I'm gone for a while.
Yes. So
one option, and this sort of creates a short window for us, but one option is, we meet with Jay on March 30th. April BHPCC meeting is April 5th. So there's probably some time in there, even though Jay won't necessarily have his final review, but I think that we'll be able to work in a lot of what he has provided us with in terms of feedback at that point. So that can be, although that doesn't give folks a lot of time to read it themselves. So yeah, never mind. As I'm speaking out loud, I'm thinking that may be difficult.
Would people be able to join an extended meeting on April 5th?
Sorry, I forgot that is spring break. So that might be why a lot of people are traveling. We will be out of town.
That's right.
But any other Wednesday I could do.
Any other Wednesday. All right. I think what I'm going to do is send around a doodle poll for something to see if folks are available on a different Wednesday before our regularly scheduled meeting. Does that sound good? And we'll see if we can find another Wednesday, and we'll do kind of maybe the There were a few conflicts. I also have to go back and look at what we just, when we landed on this date, there were conflicts. That's why. I think there's a SACY meeting maybe on like the second Wednesday. Is that it? How do people feel about dedicating maybe like a Saturday or a Sunday afternoon? The other part of this is we have had some money in the budget for a DEI training. DEI training, I think, is something that you don't really want to jump into unless it's just like, these are the vocabulary words that we're going to start using, is something you don't want to open up and then shut down without giving people time to process. And I also think could be done better in person. So if we wanted to make this get everyone together, do some of the strategic, the first of 2 or 3 rounds of iterative review of the strategic planning process, and maybe also dedicate 2 hours to DEI workshop, and have lunch in the middle, we could do that on a weekend day. Just doing a temperature check, thumbs up, thumbs down, or like, I don't know, it depends on the weekend.
So a weekend for review of the plan and a DEIJ workshop.
Correct.
And the weekend would be the spring.
I think we'd be looking at before Dave leaves town. So we are, not to put too much on Dave, but we would like him to participate probably late April. I got neutral, I got some thumbs down, Jamie's down, Ben's up, Dave's up. Okay. People are not excited about getting together on the weekend is what I'm sensing.
It's just, calendars are already getting full. So it's more like slated.
I'm also just concerned about combining the two. That may just be too much to try to do in a day. Like the strategic plan stuff already sounds so substantive that adding something else really substantive on top of it sounds like maybe too much for one meeting space.
Okay. I can feel that. Plan to have pizza or something so you don't have to rush home for dinner. And we'll go with that. Okay, in terms of the DEI training, that we have received some recommendations. If you guys are looking for opportunities to have a more detailed, maybe not as an entire group, but Ben received some recommendations. I don't know if Ben, you can pull them up and put them in the chat. There are some workshops. Oh, I found them. There are some workshops that are being provided in Asheville. And I think Rocky maybe even participated in something like this through Building Bridges and the RJC. So those dates include some dates in March and some dates in April. They're both two-day long workshops, and they're from 9 to 5, which I know is hard to get on people's calendar. I'm certainly not going to make it a requirement to participate in the BHPCC. But since we're having a hard time finding a good time for all of us to do that, I'm just going to put those dates in the chat here. And I think there's also a link to register. Because it is something that I think, we're all representatives of an industry that needs to be more inclusive. So why not? Right. Great. We have about a half hour left in the agenda, and I think we're going to move on to committee reports. And first up.
One quick comment on
Sure.
the REI training that is listed there. They have a waiting list. And so it took me about 9 months to get in the queue. So I encourage y'all to just put your name in the waiting list. And that means that sometime in the future, they'll bring a date and it might work for you or might not, but then you'll be kind of on the first cohort list of getting emails. Hopefully the waiting list is shorter than that right now, but I think that's really that was my experience. So I really encourage everyone to just do it right now. It takes a minute to fill out their form, and then you'll be in the queue so that you can really lock in dates for yourself. And then it doesn't have to be collective. It would be cool if we all could do the same dates, but it can very much be a personal experience. I did it on my own, and I think that it was still really enriching. So I think that it doesn't have to be collective, and that it's a fantastic resource. I highly recommend.
Thanks, Maggie. Okay, Dave, you're up to talk about the 100% strategic plan process, which you've already mentioned, but is there anything else you want to share or get from the BHPCC today?
I think that most of the stuff has already been covered. The only plug that I'll give is that, like I said, it's already pretty lengthy, but there's still some holes that we're waiting to hear back on folks from transportation being one of them. And then I'll pass the policy topic off to you, but policy is the other one in there that still needs some work before it's completely finalized with the first draft. Otherwise, we're good to go.
Great, thanks, Dave, and congratulations again on having it in a draft form. It looks really good.
Thank you.
Keith or Dave, I'm not sure. I know the transportation committee didn't have a chance to meet this month, but I also know that you've requested some time on the agenda for next month. So is there something you want to give us an update on, or something you want to kind of prime the group with?
I'd like to just, I think I sent this out to everybody, and I'm going to put a website in the chat, or a link in the chat. The North Carolina Clean Transportation Plan was released today for comment. It was released yesterday. And so there's a comment period on the plan, which is only 44 pages, not 144 pages. And they're requesting comments. It has to be in between today and March 15th. So it's a pretty quick turnaround. I was looking through it. There's also, if you're really interested and you want to go to an event that's about this, it's the 7th in Hendersonville. They're having a live meeting, an open house. Let me just make sure that's correct. Yeah. It's the City of Hendersonville Operations Center from 5 to 7 on Monday, March 6th. So next week. So that's one of the things, and we're meeting after that to kind of discuss what we find out in between here and then. And yeah, so that's really all I had from transportation. It's certainly, it'll be interesting to compare that for our strategic plan to what they're talking about in that strategic plan. So that's my 137 seconds.
Great, and I'll follow up with you and Dave about what a longer transportation conversation might be like on next month's agenda. So the policy task force, which is amorphous, honestly, I just kind of have done a couple things asking and pinging people who I knew were interested or paying attention to certain topics. And that's going to be how I think it'll continue to operate just to move things forward. Thank you very much to both Dave and I think he jumped off, but Steve Bannon, spent some time putting together draft comments on the county's comp plan. And Brownie, I don't know if you had a chance to see those. They're pretty thoughtful, and the big picture is that the comprehensive plan talks about renewable energy assets and EV infrastructure, but actually doesn't talk about energy efficiency and energy retrofits very, very much at all. So Dave was able to submit those actual red line edits of the comprehensive plan as a comment through the survey. So just as one individual. What we have decided is that if we're going to send a letter from the whole committee, we also really want to make sure it includes transportation impacts. So Keith and Dave, I had emailed at least Keith, and I can forward it to Dave. A lot of the comprehensive plan is where priority building is going to happen, and what they refer to as like congestion management issues. So if we're going to have a thoughtful, like one letter from the BHPCC, I want it to reflect both those suggestions from Steve, but also the transportation priorities that we would like to include. So if you haven't had a chance to look at it, I want to encourage the transportation committee to look at it. And then if you have suggestions, I'm going to follow up after this to see if we can get those in. I think the window of opportunity to influence the comp plan is kind of coming to a close relatively soon. The survey, I think, was their attempt at getting feedback from the community. So there are people we can send a formal letter to, and I would like to take that opportunity if possible.
I think that's right, Michelle. So yeah, if the group wants to send something in or other individuals want to send something in, I think there's probably value in getting it in sooner rather than later, even if it's kind of just what you have at this point, right? Even if there's kind of more work to be done, I think getting stuff in would be great. So if there's something you wanted to come from the group, maybe even say like, here's what we have. If you have any comments, let us know by a date pretty soon. And if we don't hear any objections, then it's going in under the group name, right? Because probably it'll be stuff that there's wide agreement on is my hunch. So maybe something like that I'd suggest. I think there is still a window, but it's definitely starting to close. So
Sure. So short of well, again, no transportation impacts are written up in what we've sent before. We did circulate and many people replied that they did take what we had drafted and commented and also incorporated their own comments. So if you all saw the kind of the redlined edit version of the section of the comprehensive plan, which is focused specifically on what is it called? Is it like technologies? It's not called climate. It's called something else. But it is basically where the renewable energy policy work is woven into like that portion of the plan. And we actually edited those. I can send those back out again if you want to see them again for feedback. And then I'm going to close the feedback window on this at the end. I'm going to give it one full week. So I don't know if the transportation committee has an opportunity to do anything in the next week or so. I'll follow up with Keith offline, but at least comments on what we've proposed for the other section. I'm going to give one more week on that. And then we're going to send a letter by the end of next week, if that's okay. All right. It is also the city's budget planning time, and they have also put out a survey to the community and are seeking feedback. Now, this survey, I don't know, Maggie, I don't want to put you on the spot. Is there anything you'd like to say about the survey, Maggie? You don't have to.
There are several, I would love to share it. There are several questions about the environment, and I encourage you to take the survey and leave any comments you have. My read of the survey is that some of the questions are a little biased, and that kind of surprises me for the city. The environment questions are the ones that seem just like a little bit different than the others. And I think that is important for us to understand that culture change is at the heart of a lot of work. And if some folks are feeling like sustainable choices are always about cost savings or not, that's a signal that we need to get into the hearts and minds of people, including city staff and county staff and staff everywhere. So I would have loved the questions to maybe have been perhaps a little bit more neutral. And it's a really good lesson for us that even when we have advocates in the organization and we have really amazing staff in the organization, that a big part of what we're doing isn't just installing the good technology, it's really bringing people along. So that was some of my reaction. And I know that some others had similar reactions having chatted with y'all. So given that we need to center that culture change as well, this is an opportunity to take the survey because it's important to participate in our budget process in the first place, but it's also a time to really give feedback about how the questions come off to you. And maybe you have a different reaction to those questions, and that would be awesome. But either way, it literally will take you like 4 minutes. Like, you should do it while I'm rambling right now, and leave any comment you'd like.
I did just drop the link in the chat. So if we wanted to just give everyone a couple minutes to open that link up, and just make sure you have it up on your screen so that whether you're not, I give you permission to for work on it now or right after the meeting, if you want to pay attention to the last section, which would probably be great. But it is in the chat right there. And I think it's really important that we're giving Maggie and other allies that we have in city government a counter narrative, right? So if you read this survey, you might read it and be like, oh, we can't do that. And that might be what a lot of the survey questions might, the responses might be to the survey as it is worded now. So we really want people with expertise in the field that understand that these are long payback windows when you make investments in renewable energy technologies, to say that in the comments. And we all only get one comment. Otherwise, I would have written like 5. Actually, my husband's going to write one too. But yeah, please share it with your friends and family as well. Keith, please resend the information. Okay.
Window was extended by a week to, it was going to be this Friday, and now it is next Friday the 10th.
Great.
Should we use all 6 of our emails?
That would be the other thing I'll say about this is that the city has never done a public input survey at the beginning of our budget process. Like, that's pretty cool, right? Like, there's a lot of really technical information that you've elected us to sort through in the process. And like, my sleeves are rolled up, I'm ready for it. And getting signals on vision and priorities helps us be informed ahead of the process before we get into the real technical money detail of it. So I'm really thankful that staff is testing out a method to kind of have engagement outside of public comment windows. So that is great. And I don't want to slam them and be like, it wasn't perfect. What the heck? Like, they're trying something new and this is awesome. And that cultural piece of how we value sustainability has room for growth. So thanks for letting me share.
Thank you, Maggie.
Maggie, just a question, if you can't, I mean, who writes the survey? Do you know who?
Exact staff.
Staff. Okay.
Staff
Yeah,
is-
I mean, it's just
Sure.
actually incorrect. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know what review process, and I've decided that I'm not gonna directly address it at this time. I think that, again, this is a good signal that the internal culture at city staff has some predetermined blinders on, and calling them out over email isn't a step I want to take now. I just want to take it as a signal of like, folks believe in this, but there's an opportunity to kind of get folks into the same lane of thought. So anyway.
No, I think that's great, and we'll hopefully it will help with comments. So yes, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for taking the opportunity to comment, everyone, please. Okay, lastly, as Dave has asked and mentioned, and I mentioned earlier, there could be some more work done to really fine tune the policy section of the strategic plan. And I wonder if anyone is interested in that. This would be a distinct task force mission. We would meet one time and work offline and probably conclude this episode of the task force in the next month or so. So if anybody has some time in the next month and would like to work on the policy section of the strategic plan, you could just raise your hand if you know right now, or email me anytime. Looking through. Okay. Ben has already offered some comments, and we have met with Maggie. And Maggie, I'm going to write up what I think your suggestions were at our last meeting, and then send it to you just to look at and make sure I got it right.
I'm happy to dig in further too. Thanks.
All right, wonderful. Thank you. And then Ken, I might run some ideas past you as well. And then there are some folks that are not actually BHPCC members that are also going to be helping out, that are policy folks, and some folks from our tech advisory committee as well. So that's great.
Hey, Michelle, I have a quick question. Is there any like guiding document on this plan? I'm not sure about the scope or, kind of like audience and stuff like that. I don't know if that exists anywhere.
You have to ask Dave about that. I don't know either.
Audiences general as well as public and local government officials. I mean, sort of all of the above. I'm not sure if that answers completely your question or if there was something else you were trying to get to, but that's sort of the answer to that part.
Okay, but there's no like master doc that just kind of goes over the purpose or scope of the document anywhere.
No, other than the idea that it's sort of founded and based on and in response to the Cadmus report of moving to 100 that that left out some sort of major pieces.
Understood. Thanks.
All right. Next up, Jamie, who has been serving as the chair of the technology committee. Jamie.
So the technology committee has been reviewing the 100% renewable plan, like specific elements of it and editing it in the meetings. So we've had like working meetings. The last one, we looked at action initiative 7 and 8, and I presume the technology committee will continue to do this kind of work in the next couple of meetings. We also talked about the Duke Carbon Plan shareholder meetings that are coming up. There's some, this is difficult because Duke is technically on this body. So how do you do advocacy that's needed on that policy front? And I think that Michelle's trying to answer that question with working on the policy task force. So we talked about this public comment period coming up and that folks should know about it. And I think the word is out. And then we've talked about a heat pump water heater bulk purchase program similar to Solarize. I submitted or I am about to submit a funding request from the city, from the county for meeting their climate objectives to do such a campaign. So to have a staff member here that would help push a water pump, a hot heat pump water heater bulk purchase campaign like Solarize for 250 customers in Buncombe County. So Don Nicholson has been working really hard on this. He's done a bunch of legwork to kind of get it all lined up. But it seems like a no-brainer as far as energy is concerned because they pay themselves back so fast. The big X factor is about electric resistance heat, either forced air or radiant heat. You don't get really the savings initially until you also swap that out, because what you end up having is that's the heat that's heating the water if it's in the living space. So that can be a problem that needs to be addressed. But other than that, it seems like it seems like a home run. Like if we're going to focus in on the low-hanging fruit, that would be really helpful. Plus, there's a lot of IRA resources, Inflation Reduction Act resources available for heat pump water heaters. That's what we talked about at the technology committee. I was voluntold to be the chair in June. It's almost been a year, and I have been voluntold to find another chair. So consider where you're at, search your feelings, and see if this is something that you want to do, chair this committee. We've also talked about it becoming a task force. So like for this particular thing, convening to help with the 100% renewable work, and then take a break and then reconvene when those tasks are needed. So that also has been floated by the committee. But I wanted to put that out to everyone that I am being voluntold the opposite. So we're looking for a chair for the committee.
It's much easier to get a leader for a task force. Plus you can get t-shirts.
You get a
I didn't
t-shirt for
get
that?
T-shirts.
Yeah.
You have to make the t-shirt. To make it a task force, then make the t-shirt.
T-shirt task force. All right. Thank you for that, Jamie. If anyone's interested in being the tech advisor or tech committee chair, please let Jamie know. I do want to give some time to the community engagement committee because yeah, I think we're reviewing a whole plan. Am I right about this right now?
Well, it's a part of the plan, and it was drafted by the Community Engagement Committee, and it's essentially what Jamie had mentioned earlier about 2 phases, 2 approaches. One's with regard to raising visibility with communications, and the other is with regards to community engagement. So it's only about 2 to 3 pages, but it's cross-cutting and applies throughout the plan. And we've got some ideas on raising visibility with regards to upgrading some of the marketing materials and messaging, website content, things of that nature, gaining some media coverage when there's news to share. So there's a whole element focused on communications. And then there's an element, second phase, which is community engagement and really ensuring that the BHP is present and has a present at all, or as many GBA events as we possibly can, which would require some participation from the council members of attending at least one GBA event per year and showing up, participating, and kind of representing the BHPCC at least one GBA event. There's an idea about hosting our own climate-related event, co-hosting potentially with others in the community. There's elements of social media interaction. So I encourage everybody to take a look at it when you're reviewing the plan, and it's really based on reality and bandwidth. There was a lot in the plan before that was a little bit fuzzy, and it just seemed like we needed to really get a handle on tactics, on what can actually be done by the current staff capacity, as well as engagement from the council members. The community engagement committee is pretty small, so I encourage anybody who's interested to join that committee. But the plan right now is pretty tactical if you look at it, and we're really just trying to think through how we can best utilize the existing resources to do the most to raise awareness, educate, and engage community members with a lens always on equity, diversity, and inclusion. So take a look. Please give honest, candid feedback, and know that while we would love to reach for the stars, there is an opportunity to do what we can with the bandwidth that we have. So that's why you'll see that it's 2 pages instead of 5. And if we want to add to it in the future, and there's more, if there's more engagement from the council to carry out some of these activities, then we can expand upon it. There's also something in there about a month-long community climate challenge. Other cities have done this. There's models out there. It could be done in Earth Month or any month throughout the year. But taking a page from some other cities who have done that, we could get creative with a lot that's on there. So thank you. I do not have a link to it. I'm not sure how we're going to share that, Dave or Jamie.
Yeah, I can share a link.
Jamie, yeah, great.
Great. Is Sam on the call?
He's feeling ill today, but he asked me to bring like 3 things up about fundraising.
Okay.
Dogwood Health Trust, we've reapplied for our home repair funding, which I think is $100,000 to help folks with home repairs to help do energy efficiency. I was looking over at Hannah because she's the one that works on that. And then also supporting. Do you want to jump in? Okay. And then also we're applying to the county for the strategic plan implementation support to do the heat pump water heater program, to have staff member to do that. And we're looking at help, for the hot water heater, we're applying to the county for the strategic partnership. And then for strategic plan implementation, we're applying to the, it's CFWNC, Community Fund of Western North Carolina. And then we're going to apply for a Hero X prize for DOE, the Buildings Up prize, which a few of you have sent over to us. So I wanted to let you know they were on that. And then Hannah, did you want to talk about the city contract really briefly?
Sorry, our internet's being really funky over here today, so you're cutting in and out. So the Dogwood Health Trust, just to back up, is going to be $150,000. So I'm in the process of the second phase of the grant application. The city contract has been signed for ARPA, so that will be for more solar, more HVAC repairs or heat pump repairs and replacements. And that's also going to help fund our youth workforce development program for Energy Savers Network that we are going to be implementing this summer. And then along with that, we are also working with the city to apply for another Dogwood Health Trust grant to help expand GBA's capacity over the next couple of years. So that's moving slower than we anticipated, but that's definitely still in the works. And the city will also be giving us a lump sum at some point soon, we hope, in order to push these projects through more quickly. We're hoping for around 100,000 upfront, but that, once again, we just signed that contract with them, so we'll probably have to amend it at some point. The county did approve our amendment with their fiscal recovery fund contract, so we should be getting $75,000 through them, hopefully by next week or so. That is going to help us move through HVAC and solar projects more quickly. It's just been with cash flow and having to pay for the projects upfront ourselves and then waiting to get reimbursed. It's just not moving at the pace we wanted to. We have so many projects ready to go, so our funnel is just kind of getting wider and wider. Even, if we can only have 2 to 3 projects going at a time, so that will be exciting. Did I answer your questions when it came to fundraising, Jamie? Okay.
Yeah, that's good. Thanks. And then,
Okay.
So the intent of this section, I think, is to kind of let everyone know, hey, here's on the ground what's happening for green building and getting to our goal here of 100% clean energy by renewable energy by 2042. So Keith, for the transportation committee, it might make sense to hear what Land of Sky is working on in the transportation sector for funding, to kind of in the same vein of like, here's what's going on the ground to fund this stuff.
So I don't really have anything specific that they're working on. I know they're working on they should have a transportation demand coordinator coming onto staff, which will really help for those of you who are not familiar with that sort of job. So that person's job is to help people get places. Usually it's really has a focus on places without being alone in a car. And I know they've got somebody coming on soon for that. They also have somebody who's dedicated to bike ped infrastructure, which also will have an effect. They have a lot of other things in the works, but I don't feel comfortable. I know I'll forget things, even though the meeting was only a week ago.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I meant like the intention for like bringing that. So it's not just about GBA, it's about what are the funded opportunities right now.
No, I'll add that on my expectation list. I'll try to provide that in the future. I've got a t-shirt for y'all for your task force.
Thank you. Did you do that instead of taking the survey? No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, I already took the survey.
So I don't know if you guys are seeing in the chat, we just got a message. There was Jeff Thomas from the NC Public Staff was on the call and he just wrote us a little note. So take a look at that. That's interesting. And, interesting that public staff turned up at our meeting. Kind of cool. Okay, we're about to lose folks. We're a little over time. Jamie, are there any other important updates? And we do need to take public comment as well. Okay.
Oh.
All right. If there are any members of the public or actually any members of the committee that would like to make a comment about anything that we have run through here quickly at the end in particular, this is your opportunity. Please just identify that you'd like to speak and I'll call on you. Okay. Seeing none. Does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share? Just general.
Yeah, Michelle, I've got one real quick.
Okay.
It's a ways out, but Sunday, April 30th is Asheville's Drive Electric Earth Day event. I will put the website in the chat. You can find more information online. And if you've got a plug-in card you'd like to bring, we would love you to register it that you're bringing it out. I'll put that in the chat.
Cool. Thanks, Dave. Any other announcements?
I think it's awesome that Jeff Thomas was on this call, which I kind of noticed it at the very end, but I wasn't aware he was on when we were talking about the program. So if we had some influence over their thinking around all this, perhaps this was like an awesome use of our time. So
Yeah, he put for his pronouns, he put public staff instead of he his. So that was cool. He identified himself, which was great.
okay.
Good meeting, everyone. Appreciate your time, and I'll follow up with a bunch of you pretty soon.
All right. Bye, everyone.